Hello, everyone. It's Kate Stallman with yogahealer.com and the online Living Ayurveda course. And I'm here with Mary Sullivan of Dare to Self-Care, who's our self-healer mentor in the Living Ayurveda course. And our topic today is on getting to the root of autoimmune disease. And what I hope you all come away with is a perspective, right? A lens in which to see and not the only lens, but yet another lens, maybe a more holistic and definitely a more Ayurvedic lens in which to understand what's happening with autoimmune disease. And we'll go into a bit of like the scope of the problem, everything that we really cover in Living Ayurveda course, just a very big overview on why it's good for people with autoimmune disease, or even, I mean, last year we had a few people with autoimmune diseases, including one member with a 10-year-old boy with diabetes type 1, which is autoimmune. So we see it both in the family healer role and the self-healer role. We also attract a lot of pro healers who, obviously, as a pro healer, you're running into autoimmune left, right, and center. And we'll get into this why that is and how big autoimmune issues really are, and again, what's happening behind the scenes. So for those just arriving, I've asked everyone in the chat window to say basically where you're calling in, or where you're Skyping, calling, Zooming, where you're Zooming in from. Oh, I like that. And if you're here because you're interested in all things Ayurveda, or if you're here because you have either personally an autoimmune diagnosis, and if so, what that is, or if you're taking care of someone with an autoimmune diagnosis and what that is, and also how long you've had the diagnosis. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. I'm going to go ahead and go to slides, and as I do, Mary, just kind of keep your eye on that chat, if you will, too, and just seeing all the different things that are coming on in. All right, here we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, great. So, yay, you guys made it. And you made it on time. That's awesome. We have 72 people here on time for getting to the root of your autoimmune disease. And this is one of our three actually four, there's one more coming up, Living Ayurveda Masterclass Series. This is number 3. And just a quick review, the first one for those was on pro healers and how to start to think in the bigger picture with Ayurveda. And the second one was on family healer, and to really get clear on who you're influencing and who's influencing you. Because as people in relationship, which we all are, we start to realize our habits are on our own. So if you missed either of those two classes, I strongly recommend going back. There's exercises in them that can shifting your perspective. If there's anything that I've learned in being a student of Ayurveda for a couple decades, it's that it's perspective changing. And as you have a more grounded and cosmological perspective, your thinking changes and your ability to problem solve elevates and escalates and amplifies. So for those who are interested in Living Ayurveda, I'm just going to say 2 things right off the bat before we get into autoimmune. And our course starts the end of September. For more information and to get into the process of enrollment with that, to even check it out, yogahealer.com/Living Ayurveda. And you'll talk to Gail Edison. This is Gail. For those of you who know Grace Edison, this is her younger sister, and she's awesome. She's the person you'll talk to about Living Ayurveda course. So you can also just find her on Facebook, Gail Edison, and reach out to her directly. All right, for those who don't know me, I'm Kate, and I've been doing this, I don't know, Mary, when did we first meet?
Oh my goodness. Early 2000, maybe 1997, 98, something in there.
So it's been a while, and I was the person who was really interested in Ayurveda. I was also interested in yoga, more on the philosophical enlightenment in front. I come from basically a global environmental activism and politics perspective, and I was just looking at how do we help human beings become more conscious so we take better care of our ecosystem, of our shared planet. And what I found in that path was that helping people take better care of their bodies is a really essential step. And that's what brought me into Ayurveda. And I went back and forth between Ayurveda basically practitioners and yoga teachers, and became a bit of a translator for the systems to better understand each other, for the people to have more access to the wisdom. And so I started yogahealer.com in 2001 in that vein. And then began to create curriculum, because I found the curriculums I wanted to teach didn't exist. these modern, practical, what should I do today? I'm a busy person. Those curriculums didn't exist, and Ayurveda was a little too hard to unpack. Things have really evolved tremendously over the last 17 years, which I'm so glad that more and more people are getting access to this ancient wisdom. And my desire with Living Ayurveda course is to really be the evolving edge of the future of Ayurveda conversation as it applies to modern humans, like the most practical conversations we can have leaning into the future together. So that's who I am. That's my bend. You can see I've done all this stuff. I've written a Body Thrive. I'm writing Awake Living now, and we have these courses, and I've created a global community of pro healers called Yoga Health Coaching. So it's been busy, hasn't it, Mary?
Oh, it's because it's always evolving, because we're on the leading edge, it doesn't get stagnant. It's an amazingly active community. It's fabulous.
Yeah, and it really is the community that drives the content and drives the curriculum. I get a large experimentation group to see what works. And Living Ayurveda has been an experimentation course since 2007, and it's great to see how it continues to evolve, especially as autoimmune disease have continued to evolve. There's way more autoimmune on the forefront than there was in 2007. And so again, because we're leaning into what do people need, we've evolved right along with this. And here's Mary, daretoselfcare.com. I wanted to make sure we got your website on here. And when you came in as a yoga teacher and you started to then get really interested in Ayurveda, I can't remember, I think the first Yogi Detox you did with me was like the first one we did online. Yeah. And I don't remember what year it was, maybe 2007.
Yeah, and I did the first Living Ayurveda, then it was called the Ayurvedic Living Course. But I did the first Living Ayurveda course because to me, when you take the time to embody, then you gain so much more benefit than by the learning. And I'm not saying you don't gain benefit in learning, but when you embody, you create real shift in yourself. And I needed that very much. So I was really vested in this type of learning program.
Yeah, and it's been so great to see that as you've evolved on your path, you've been able to, I mean, one of our core values at Yoga Healers that we learn and we share, and then we mentor, and then we master. So that the mentoring part is part of our mastery part, that it's like you think you know so much until you try to mentor someone else. And this is really where I've seen such a tremendous growth in our, and what I'm going to talk about next is in our self-healer path, which is it's a direct avatar path at Yoga Healer. And my goal is to first wake people up to that. Everyone needs to be their own self-healer, first and foremost. No one can do that for you. We all know that. That's why we're here. That's why we're learning. And good for you all for getting here and being invested in your own path as a self-healer and in your own skillfulness. Because as you get more skillfulness, you get more capable of helping yourself. And so my experience in this is that self-healers become personal thrivers. And this is what it's all about. So anyone that's coming in with Living Ayurveda with an autoimmune disease, you're automatically in the self-healer path, because we want you to become your own best healer and work through the entire curriculum under that perspective, so that by the end, you're like, check, I'm a self-healer and I'm on I might not be a thriver yet, but like I'm en route. I can see I've shifted my trajectory and I'm en route to continuing to evolve my wellness.
And I'll just add something to that. When you do that and when you embody that, you're creating standards in your family by your example that will perhaps have your children and other people around you express their DNA in the healthiest way possible. And that's brilliant. Because, all right, you tripped the autoimmune issue and your immune system needs some real support, but you can not only can you help yourself, but you can prevent someone else in your house who may have that similar genetics from tripping their autoimmune system by the learning, by the embodiment.
Yeah, amen to that. And we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that right now, actually, of how what's going on with autoimmune, just some very big figures and what's going on. So this is from Autoimmune versus Cancer Costs. And this is just in the United States. It's in the billions. So cancer costs in the United States are about 50 billion. NIH, this is the National Institute of Health for those of you who are down under or across and are not Americans. And autoimmune is double that. right? And so this is kind of, it's a big number. And if we start to see what's going on, and this is what Mary was just saying, there's a close genetic relationship among autoimmune disease, which explains why clustering in individuals and families is a common pathway of the disease. And it might not even, this is interesting too, is like 2 or 3 family members might not have the same autoimmune disease. They may have different autoimmune diseases. From an Ayurvedic perspective, there's a problem with the immune system. There's a problem with immune function. And I just want to preview what we're going to get into my six, I have these 6 magic habits for immune restoration that we do in real time. Like this, my whole dharma is really tied up to people actually evolving. People actually evolving first into self-healers, then into personal thrivers. And there's certain things that we need to do. There's certain things that we need to learn to do that. So we know that there's a genetic component. This is sort of a scary, this is a little scary slide here. This is again from the NIH. This is right on their autoimmune homepage. Commonly used immunosuppressant drugs, they say treatments. I changed it to drugs because it really is drugs, lead to devastating long-term side effects. And I'm just going to pause to really let this is big damage, right, that are caused by the drugs that we're trying to use to treat. And this is right on the NIH. This is like, these guys, they're not selling the drugs there. Like they don't have any vested interest in them. They're just reporting statistically now we have enough studies to show that these drugs that we're using to try to suppress the immune response and trying to treat an autoimmune disease have devastating, this is not a light word. Devastating is devastating, right? And that it's long-term. It's not a devastating short-term side effect. It's a devastating long-term side effect. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, we're looking at this. Remember this slide, you guys? We've used it in the last 2 master classes. We're looking at what's going on in the immune system. Because the person who has 5 kosha health, so on all levels, the physical level of body, the energetic level of what's happening in their energy body, the mental emotional level, which we know there's such a strong correlation between stress, right? That the mind and the emotions are not handling stress, the day-to-day stress in autoimmune. What's going on with that? What's going on in the Vijnanamaya kosha? This is the higher level of intelligence, which I basically look at as regret and yearning. The ability to process, right? Like every day at the end of the day, you can quickly process, like, what do I regret? What do I regret about my life choices? What do I regret about what I did today? And then what do I really want? So this sharpens the knowledge sheath to steer. And then the highest sheath, or the most all-inclusive sheath, is the bliss body, is the most subtle essence of the self, which is informing that yearning and regret, is informing what do I want and what do I want to avoid that I've already been doing too much of. So if we look at a 5 kosha perspective and we look at what's happening with immune breakdown, we have this tragedy on our hands. Let's go to another. This is some data here. Researchers have identified 80 to 100 different autoimmune diseases and suspect at least 40 additional diseases of having an autoimmune basis. These diseases are chronic and can be life-threatening. I highlighted the chronic instead of the life-threatening. Why did I do that, Mary?
Well, because chronic means every day. So for me, this is why you did it, because it's going to affect your life every day left you're alive in a way that limits you and has problems. And the other reason why chronic is so important is because when you look at medicine, Western medicine's approach to chronic illness, that's not where Western medicine shines brightest. And it is where Ayurveda really can shine, really can add the layer of support and help to make difference in that journey, that day-to-day journey. Is that a fair answer?
Exactly. Well, it really is, because if we look, this is a worksheet from the Living Ayurveda course. This comes up after we have a really good basis of vocabulary, which happens more in the first trimester. So in the second trimester, we start to look from a very personal perspective of what is happening in the disease process. And disease in Ayurveda is a pretty, I mean, we went, for those of you who missed the first, I didn't copy the slide under this to minimize this to 54 slides today. But if you go back to the slides from the Pro Healer masterclass we did with Alexandra Epley, who's the Pro Healer Living Ayurveda mentor, we really much more deeply went into what's happening in these different stages of disease and in the different types of digestion, et cetera. So if we look from an Ayurvedic perspective, Ayurveda is looking at these 6 stages. By the time, and I just want to identify here, by the time you get to an autoimmune diagnosis, you're at least at stage 4. So this is why, I mean, and I'd love to hear in the chat window, like how many of you had symptoms before you had a diagnosis? How long did you have symptoms for before you had an autoimmune diagnosis? And for those of you who are pro healers and you're here for your clients, think of 1 or 2 or at the most 3 of clients that you're working or patients or students that you're working with that have an autoimmune diagnosis and run through what symptoms they may have had before they had a diagnosis, and also run through for how long.
Yeah. I can, while people are thinking about that, I can say from my perspective, I had things going wrong for years that weren't being connected to any overbranching issue. They were being treated as individual issues, inflammation problems, joint problems, and without looking at it from a higher level, you can really miss what's going on.
Yeah.
10 years, someone said. So I agree. For me, it was about 8, 9 years. Someone else was diagnosed not after 12 years, over 15 years. I mean, this is a long time to be treading water in a way that gives you no direction to get to shore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and if we look too, it's like that, and right, it's not even that we stay in the same place,
Right,
often with these symptoms, because
because it's a downward spiral. Yeah.
And this is where too, so if you look back now, Mary, and you look at from an Ayurvedic perspective, when you look back to the earliest symptoms, do you see accumulation or aggravation, those very first state? Like when you like reverse back to the first symptoms, could from an Ayurvedic diagnosis, you start to see like, oh, there were things I could do, and with the right assessment of that, even self-assessment, having the knowledge. This is, again, you guys, we want you, like, and I'm gonna say it until everyone leaves here with this in their head, like, we turn, again, oops, where am I trying to find it here? We turn self-healers into personal thrivers, right? And so if we see what's happening in the root of disease tree, these roots of disease are happening in the accumulation aggravation. So those very first symptoms that you might have, some early symptoms could be just honestly waking up puffy face in the morning. And if anyone doesn't have an autoimmune diagnosis and you're like and you're here because you love Ayurveda, we separated those 2 camps early on. If you wake up with a puffy face a few times a week, like this should be like oh, right? Or joint pain, traveling joint pain. Just another little like, oh, these are really early symptoms of accumulation aggravation. Mucus, loose stool alternating with hard stool. And these are just really easy early on signs of doshic imbalance that go from the digestive tract, start to overlay. Also, anyone that's having more of like a hyperimmune response, like allergies, including food allergies. All of these are signifying, again, with an Ayurvedic perspective, right? And the more we learn the Ayurvedic perspective, we're getting really clear on what symptoms do I have now so that we don't have to get to number 4. If we can uproot the disease tree, right? If we can start to work on the very simple lifestyle habits, and again, I'm going to get into my top 6 here. If we can start to work right away on those, the idea is that we start to dissolve the tree of disease. Now, when we do that, again, like Mary said earlier, like no one's here alone. Like you all affect other people in your lives. You start to be able to affect positive change in the people that you're with. You create more healthy culture. And that's one of the best things that, to me, that we can do. Okay, so let me see, I just want to catch up to myself. If your immune system, this is one, Mary, that you added. If your immune system goes awry without support, you're more likely to have additional immune system malfunction. Talk about that for a minute. What's going on there?
Well, if you think about the immune system as losing its accuracy and resiliency as part, it becomes cloudy. So it's cloudy. It's not clear. I'm going to use guna terms because that's the way I think about it. And so when it's cloudy and it makes a mistake and it starts to attack a certain type of tissue or system in your body, and you eventually get diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. But if you don't start to address that cloudiness, it just gets more cloudy. And then the next weakest system is in line for attack because the immune system has lost its awry. It's lost its accuracy. It's lost its clarity. So people who are diagnosed with one immune system disorder are much more likely to be diagnosed with a second, and that's why. It's because you have something that's out of whack, that's cloudy, that's not accurate, and it starts to wear on your systems and tissues in terms of their basic weaknesses. So if your joints are the place where your body has challenges, then it might go after your joints first, and you might get a diagnosis of RA. But then if it goes after soft tissue or other systems, you might get a different, or your nervous system, people get RA and then get Parkinson's. People get RA and then get lupus, and this is what happens because you're on this path where you've got this pitula, which is smeared or cloudy. So it's in confusion. And I really wanted to mention, this is one of the slides too, when you looked at those numbers for cancer, when you think about cancer, a lot of cancer is immune system disorder. So all of this money is under the broadest umbrella. Now, when the immune system is aggressive and cloudy, it doesn't know what it's doing, it attacks your body and you get autoimmune. When the immune system is too weak and confused, it doesn't attack cancer cells that it should attack and kill, and so cancer proliferates. And it's a very, so that's when you think about immune system health and the broadest definition, it's a huge issue for the people of this country and for the medical community.
Well, I mean, and if we go back to that, right, like this, again, these numbers are at the stage of localization or manifestation or spread. So it's stages 4, 5, or 6. So when you account for what's going on in 1, 2, and 3, all these vague symptoms that many people here listed above of 20 years of symptoms, Laura says 15 years of symptoms, symptoms, right? 10 years says Liz, 12 years says Recalm. That counts, right? Like, oh, that's got to count in this pot. So the reason I came back to the kosha slide is when Mary's talking about systems need to be clear to function well. And if there's excess cloudy as a quality, meaning there's, say it starts in the gut where you're eating stuff and you get this little puffiness in the morning, little wandering joint pain, little coating on the tongue. You may not notice. You might learn to live with it. Oh, this is just how mornings are. Oh, this is aging. Anyone who is here as an Ayurvedic practitioner or holistic practitioner, like, how many times a day do you hear, well, that's just aging? And you're like, no, that's not aging. That's on the gunas. Like, we can see there's certain qualities that's heavy. Okay, maybe it's mobile because the joint pain moves. Maybe it's in the back, then it's in the shoulders, then it's in the wrist. Oh, it's maybe a little stickiness on the tongue. And unless we have a way of saying like, oh, this makes that, this is going to lead to that. More cloudy leads to more cloudy. There's a very simple rule in Ayurveda, which is like increases like.
Yeah.
And the opposites reduce each other. So if you wake up and you're puffy and you're heavy and you have some joint pain, in Ayurveda, right? Like, this is what we teach like first thing in the Living Ayurveda course. This is really, really up front. It's like, guess what? Those are some of these signs of accumulation. These are signs that there's some ama in the body. There's some undigested food that's being stored as toxin. And we talked a little bit about this 4 types of Agni on the Pro Healer workshop. This is again another just worksheet from Living Ayurveda course where someone can start to see like, oh, maybe I have Manda Agni, maybe I have a slowness in my digestion. Or a Vata type might find, oh, I have irregular digestion where some days I can digest that food and some days I can't. But in Ayurveda, these are the very first signs that your body is not working efficiently. And any inefficiencies in the physiology, you guys, you got to get this. You are a precision instrument. And the more gunk is in your instrument, the more your immune system is got to deal with it. It's trying to clear out the gunk. It's trying to create precision, clarity, energy efficiency. I mentioned earlier how you've got like these 2 things. You've got yearning and you've got regret in the Vijnanamaya kosha, right? Every day, your body's designed to just evaluate, like, how did I do? Am I in sync? Am I in rhythm? Am I learning from what's not working? So if I wake up and I'm puffy and I got joint pain and I got coating on my tongue, am I taking a moment? What do I regret from last night? Was it the wine? Was it the pasta? Was it dessert? Or was it just eating too late? Right? Or was it just not moving after dinner? Was it, I mean, just these little tiny checks. And as we get more and more that a breakdown in our immune system, there were factors. There were warning signs before it really broke down. And the more we pause and say like, okay, what was my body trying to tell me all along? What was my mind trying to tell me all along? What was it saying? I don't like this job. I still don't like this job. Now I really don't like this job. Now I hate my boss. Now, right? Like, what were the messages? I need to change. I need to move. I need to teach my kids. I need to be a better leader at home. Like, what are the little things that added up to the stressors that broke the immune system slowly over time till it couldn't hold it together anymore? What was the tipping point? What were the million signs and signals before the tipping point? And the more you understand this, the more you understand the reason there's 80 to 100 diagnoses plus 40 plus that are now in the field, and we're looking at this mass differentiation, right? And why is there this mass differentiation? I'm looking for my tree. There's my tree. It's because the way that we do the tree of disease is a little different. It's a little different for everybody. And so we have this we have such a sophisticated technology. Some people, you're going to take your autoimmune disease, you're going to have those million warning signs, and then you'll take it right in the thyroid, and we have something like Hashimoto's. Or you'll take it systemically, and we have something like lupus. Or we'll take it right in a certain system, and we have rheumatoid arthritis or RA. But the more that we understand that the specifics to you, the further the disease goes along, the more you're going to have this shift from you're going to basically go from it being general, which is accumulation, aggravation. It's going to start to spread, and then you may have it localized in a specific tissue, or a specific gland. Diabetes type 1, right? You have pancreas. Hashimoto's, you have thyroid gland. Or localized in a system. RA, you have joints. Or throughout the whole physiology, you have lupus. So the more you start to understand that tree, the further you have more specific diagnosis, the more you're in stage 4, stage 5, and stage 6, which Western medicine is awesome at diagnosing. Until we get that all those early warning signs are actually contributing, they're basically watering the tree. So any symptoms that you had in the beginning that caused the imbalances to accumulate in the first place, that led them to become more aggravated, that all of that is just watering the disease tree. And again, you're going to see things down here like negative or repressed emotions. Why is that such a big deal in autoimmune and emotional issues? And Mary, I'd love for you to talk about that. Just some of what negative or repressed emotions and stress have to do with the disease tree, particularly to autoimmune.
Okay, so if you look at, if you look at the disease tree, you'll start to see over here is negative and repressed emotions. Now, what has that got to do with this? Well, negative and repressed emotions interfere with sleep. When you don't sleep well, your immune system can't do its job in an effective way. 1. 2, negative and repressed emotions impact your hormonal state, and they move you from a parasympathetic state, which is a natural sort of homeostasis place where the body's natural healing mechanisms are best working, into a sympathetic state where it's run for your life. I don't have time to heal now kind of a deal. So that's 2 of them. 3, negative and repressed emotions also shift your perspective. If we go back to the kosha diagram, so I was talking in the Annamaya kosha, the food sheath, but it also starts to work in the pranamaya kosha. When you're stressed, you don't breathe well. Your body gets tight. You don't get the prana you need. And your emotions you get more of what you're looking at, which is you're looking at negative and stressful things. And so you get more negative and stressful things, and that creates it sort of closes down your perspective and eliminates opportunities for change and healing in a way that's tough.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and that word samskaras, many of you are yoga students and yoga teachers, and you know that word samskaras, and that's where you're creating a deep groove of imbalance there. And it continues. I want to talk a little bit about, some of you know this work from, this is flow, from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He is a Czech researcher primarily, and he was looking at what causes the flow state. And this is a very important concept. I wish I had time to draw it out for you, but I'm going to explain it instead. So when people are in a chronic state of arousal, that's stress. Arousal equals stress. So negative and repressed emotions cause a stress on the physiology, but so does just stress in general. It might not even feel like it's a repressed emotion or a negative emotion, but if you think like, what's my relationship to stress? Mary knows, like, I have a tall order for what I do. What my quarterly goal is, like, I get a lot done. There's a lot going on, but do I have a positive relationship to my stress?
Yes.
Versus a negative relationship to our
Yes.
stress. So there's a shift in there. So it's not just stress, right? It's our relationship to stress. So what with Csikszentmihalyi, in his research, what he found was that there's skill and there's challenge. There's these axes of challenge and skill. And when the challenge is bigger than your skill, you're in a state of arousal and anxiety. And what this does, it breaks down the immune system. It's just too much. This is on the emotional level. So back to the kosha slide, we're talking about autoimmune breakdown here in the monomaya kosha, and like Mary suggested, it's directly linked to what's happening in the pranic body. Everyone, just take a moment and imagine that you're stressed. That, like, what does your physiology do? And kind of exaggerate and notice where your shoulders go. Notice where your breath goes and where it doesn't go. Notice if the energy is going more up or if it's going more down. Notice if there's tightness in your chest. If there's any, again, if we go back to the body wants efficiency, and it wants more and more energy efficiency as you age. I saw in this comment here, this is from someone commenting, saying that mine happened suddenly with not many signs. And then a few weeks later, I was diagnosed with RA. And I would actually say you're just not looking to a subtle enough level. You're just not looking to a subtle enough level of and this is where in Ayurveda, it's so important that we actually understand what the indicators are at each level of the sheaths, to understanding any sort of it becomes so different to be able to see cause and effect and cause and effect and cause and effect and cause and effect. So again, if we just go back to this, what's going on in the mental sheath, what's going on in relationship to stress. Do I love my life? Do I wake up happy every day? I can't wait to meet my challenges. What skills do I need to meet my challenges? I better work on those skills so I can meet my challenges. If I'm in that kind of relationship, I'm going to be in a flow state. And where that arrow points, that diagonal arrow, that's flow, where you have the skills to meet the challenge. Where also you're challenged enough to grow your skills. Because without that, you get boredom. So you either have arousal or boredom. Now, I don't know about you, Mary, but many people I don't talk to, I don't hear like, I'm so bored. I just have so much free time on my hands. I'm just
Yeah,
twiddling my, I don't even think this expression, I don't think the millennials know the expression twiddling my thumbs.
because they're texting with their thumbs. So, well, it's interesting. I think of it like driving on a road. Have you ever been on Route 1 in California, and there's a cliff on one side and there's a drop off on the other side, and then there's this road, and you want to be right in the center of your lane, tooling along with just the balance, because the rock wall is the boredom and the cliff is the overwhelm, and you don't want to be in either of those places. That's how I think of it from the perspective, and learning that balance, because that's not something that is static. How fast you can go, how wide the road is, those things all shift based on what's going on in your life. There's external factors we all deal with. But one of the things that I love about this class is it teaches you to assess your own capacity and improve it and build it from this, because of creating a cushion of structure that supports your freedom to build.
Yeah.
And it's really, really, and when you're dealing with an autoimmune condition, having some cushion, having structures in place to support your wellness is critical as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we look at what's going on when we don't have structures in place, this is again, I wish I had, this is the bucket of you can see on the right. So I was coaching on a Living Ayurveda course call. We were actually working with a diagnosis. Actually, here it is. This was the image. A 10-year-old with, again, diabetes type 1, which is an autoimmune. And I'm writing down all the things that are happening. There was, guess what? The symptoms started with a divorce and moving out of the house. And the kid had a lot of anger and sadness around that and felt really disconnected. And there were these problems with school. Now, all of these were the beginning symptoms. This is accumulation, aggravation in the monomycosha. And I hope you guys are getting like, okay, autoimmune's complex and Ayurveda's complex, but it's also simple. It's also on one level, if we just look for what's stressing out which body, like what body is getting congested? Is it that the person doesn't have enough time to process the emotions, what's going on? Okay, well, that's in the monomycosha. That's going to affect the energy body. It's going to affect relationship. It's going to affect all of these different things. So one of the things that we start to get is that if again, there's this bucket of you, and that in order, right, and this is in the 6 stages of disease in Ayurveda. I remember being in first year Ayurveda school, and they're like, there's this bucket, and it's you. And the more you put in imbalances, like little imbalances, the little things, like this food aggravates me, but I keep eating it. Maybe it's wine, maybe it's ice cream, maybe it's marijuana. You know what it is. You all can write a little list right now. You don't have to do it publicly in our chat, but you can all write a little list of what you do that you know aggravates your system. And this, again, is an evolving edge because you're evolving towards efficiencies. So again, the knowledge sheath is when you incorporate what you're learning to meet the next level of challenge. You're getting more skillful, right? You're growing your skill in relationship to your challenge. So what most of us do is over time, this bucket of us, it starts to generate these holes or these leaks. And so we put things like energy in, maybe we do good exercise, we do our yoga practice, we eat good food, we're putting good prana into our system, but it's leaking out. Because we're also putting in things that are aggravating us and we're not getting our lessons learned, we're not able to process in real time. Eventually the imbalances get to the level of the physical body, and they eventually get to the level of a localized tissue or localized tissue system. We went through that 10 minutes ago. Right? At that point, what's happened is the bucket's overflowed into the tree of disease. And that's what they show. There's no tree, there's no roots, anything. They show this bucket, and then the bucket gets so full of imbalances that it overflows, and that plants the roots of the tree of disease. So one of the first signs that we see in autoimmune is this arousal anxiety state. right? And it might be really super subtle, but there's a breakdown. And I just want to go into this. I redid your slide, Mary, but it doesn't mean you're a Vata body type. We could be any body type, but you want to talk a little bit about balancing Vata with immune.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Now, the interesting thing about Vata is that Vata, I think of Vata as the teenager who has the keys and wants to drive the car. Ayurveda talks about 3 doshas, but we're just going to talk about Vata today because Vata is an instigator behind. There are more diseases or illnesses associated with Vata than any other dosha. And Vata is very involved in the immune system. And there's the 3 doshas, Pitta, Kapha, and Vata. Now, Vata is air and ether. So why do you think that might be involved in disease? Because, well, you look at it, it moves, it's mobile. It's involved in your nervous system. It's involved in your hormones. Everything that moves in the body is hitching a ride on Vata. And so if we can go back to that other slide, I'll say, if you look at balanced Vata, it's a fabulous force in your life. It's got creativity. It lets you be flexible. It lets you be open to life and feel inspiration. But when it gets out of balance, these cold, mobile, dry, light qualities can really drive some health issues. So I remember Kate talked about like increases like. Well, the other part of that statement is opposite balances. So opposites balance. So if Vata is cold and mobile and dry and light and rough, what do you want to do once you see that in your body? If you keep adding cold, mobile, dry, and rough, you keep pouring water into the bucket. If you instead add structure, add warmth, add moisture, you stop pouring water into the bucket and the bucket can come into equilibrium. You add heaviness, that guru quality. We talk about that a lot to get grounded and balanced. You add self-love because I consider dryness and roughness to be, this is just my opinion, just to be a sort of a lack of self-love. When you treat yourself in a dry, rough, critical way, it's a lack of self-love. So you add self-love and you add community. And that supports coming back into balance, which helps you when you're down here in the roots of the tree of disease. So there you go. So you act for your constitution and instead you start to live in sync instead of out of sync. You figure out what is appropriate for you in terms of movement in your life. So you put structure around things based on who you are and what's going on. Using this knowledge, like an operating paradigm. I think of Ayurveda as an operating paradigm in a fundamental way that supports wellness. That's what it's designed to do. And living Ayurveda is designed to allow you to embody the habits that support wellness.
Yeah. And it does take being in a group of people that understand the conversation at this level. And then again, many levels ahead of you. And that's part of the infrastructure, why we've built it that way in Living Ayurveda, is so that we have a really diverse mentor group that has skills and expertise to understand what's going on and to be able to up-level your perspective in real time. Because otherwise what happens is we end up with a diagnosis and it's scary. And it actually brings us into arousal and it aggravates the condition. And there's the sense there's nothing to do but take immunosuppressant drugs and we get, again, they have long-term devastating side effects that lead to more autoimmune conditions. So we can understand that, like when Mary's talking about structure, that structure needs community. It needs community to integrate change. We do not evolve very much on our own. We evolve, it's said, up to 70 times faster in community. So if we're nervous or we're scared or we're in an arousal state or we're worried about a child that we're taking care of or a parent that we're taking care of that has autoimmune stuff, we better know that like we want to put those accelerators in place, those community-based accelerators in place that build the kind of structure, the connection that again, are going to have very progressive life positive ideas. I saw someone wrote, it's too late. Somehow it's too late for me because I'm in the 6th stage, right? I'm in like hyper manifestation of autoimmune. That means that when we're at that means that we have more than one autoimmune disease diagnosis. So that's stage 6, right? Where it's super complex. It's never too late. And so what I want to do next is I want to get into my 6 tips. And I just also, before I do that, I just want to give people next steps on living Ayurveda. And then I'm going to get into my six, I called them magic habits. And they're not magic at all. And you already know you should be doing them, plus a few little ones that you might not be doing, or you might not realize why I put it so high on why I put it in the top 6 list. But before I get there, I just wanted to give everyone an understanding, an overview of what we do. This is a 9-month process in which we, again, are moving from becoming someone with a diagnosis to someone who's a self-healer, and then moving into personal thriver. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but there is this really great, we call it the Living Ayurveda course blueprint. I'm going to share that right in the window here. And we'll send it out to you all, but it'll give you a sense of really understanding how we go through, given the vast teachings of Ayurveda, how we break it down into a 9-month course and how we learn it in a practical way in real time. Everything we do in Living Ayurveda, as a self-healer, we're learning for ourselves and we're applying in real time. That's how the course is designed. And it's designed to be effective. It's designed to create self-healers and personal thrivers. All right, so that's just a little bit on that. Now, for my 6 magic habits. Before I get into this, though, I just want to come back to this. I'm going to come back. There's a word on the bottom here. So Mary talked about vata imbalances. I talked about arousal. And we have this word rhythm. So to me, vata keeps the rhythm. If we have a bucket and there's holes in our bucket, the rhythm's off. The rhythm's off. It always comes down to that. The rhythm's off. You're out of sync with the universe that created you. Now, remember, it's an evolving scale here. You're supposed to get better and better and better and better at that day after day, season after season, year after year, decade after decade. But you're living in a culture of chaos. Culture's going the other way.
Yeah.
Culture is going more and more to arousal dysfunction, right? Arousal, 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 no boredom. There's no boredom. It's just all hyper-arousal. Immune systems are falling apart. We have diversification of disease, right? Right now, there's 100 autoimmune diagnoses. My guess is 2 years, 3, well, no, I'm going to go out 5 years from now, there'll be 200. Right? There's already these 40 that we're not quite sure. It's just going to keep going up. Like Mary said, we're going to start grouping all cancers in autoimmune once we understand. The function of the immune system is this. Keep the bucket of you evolving, right? In order to do that, vata is the most subtle of the energies. All dosha means is energy. It's meant to keep the rhythm. When vata's out of rhythm, things start to fall apart. So that's my little, here's my list of 6. So not surprisingly, you need sleep. It needs to be in rhythm. Early to rise. So early to bed, early to rise. It's not just that you need 8 hours sleep, it's that they need to be at the right time. You need to fall asleep in kapha time. You need to wake up in vata time. If you don't do that, you're out of rhythm. If you've had an autoimmune diagnosis, or if you notice that you've had symptoms for a really long time, you might need tons of sleep. You might go to bed in kapha time and not be able to wake up in vata time. You're going to keep moving that bedtime back, 8 p.m. So you get 10 hours sleep, but you're still able to wake up in vata time. If you don't do that, you don't have rhythm. If you don't have rhythm, you're going to keep poking holes in this bucket of you. You're going to keep feeding the disease tree. So when we say early to bed, early to rise, if you have autoimmune stuff, this is big. And you can't go to bed on a full stomach, or you're taxing your physiology. So that's where rhythmic eating comes in. Eating 2 to 3 times a day. Some of you are convalescent. Some of you are so sick you can't digest 2 to 3 meals a day. Those meals are too big and too heavy. So Mary will help you in the self-healer path. Start with what you need to start with. That might be 4 to 5 meals a day, but she's eventually going to get you into an efficient eating, digesting, absorbing, and eliminating pattern, because that's the big thing the physical body does. It does those things to create energy and tissue. That's its big job. And if that job's not going well, there's no way you're going to get to immune system repair. So we need to make everything as efficient as possible so you start to have a surplus of energy, that your body can take this surplus of energy and start to say, okay, great, now we can clear up this mass scale inflammation that's happening. Now we can clear up these antibodies that are everywhere. Now we can clear up these really specific things that are happening in a localized system. Maybe it's the thyroid. Now we can start to repair. Your body, everyone, I want you to realize this, and I know I'm getting emphatic and aggressive here, but I just really want to drive this home. Your body, 24/7, 365, is doing everything it possibly can to heal and repair itself. If you're not cooperating with that, that's your choice. But the more you're getting communities where people are making better choices, they're making choices like, okay, I'm going to maximize here. What are the top 6 again? Okay, early to bed. Damn, that's hard. We stay up till 11. We eat dinner at 9. How am I going to do that? And when Mary says, like, we need community, like you can't turn a barge all by yourself. Get in a group that everyone's kind of got that, like, okay, how am I going to dial back my eating so that I'm eating really intentionally, so that there's an efficiency, so I can free up this energy, so my body can use all this extra energy it's getting from better sleep, that it's getting from only eating a few times a day, only digesting and absorbing on such a deeper level that I actually understand which foods that aggravate me because I have perspective. I'm not overlapping meals. And what starts to happen, you start to realize, wow, rhythmic movement, ooh, what is that? 4 to 5 times a day, that's a high bar. That's not just exercising. And you look at like some of the recommendations in the US for exercise, it's like exercise 3 times a week for 30 minutes. I'm saying exercise 4 to 5 times a day, right? Like get your body moving. You've got all these bodies. You're trying to create clarity. That pranamaya kosha, that's the bridge between the stress sheath, if you will, and the physical body. So the more you can get movement in there, and you're allowing this intelligence to start to flow, like, oh, wow, I've been sitting for more than an hour. Well, better stand up. And it doesn't have to be a lot of movement. It doesn't have to be a workout, but it's movement. It's intentionally moving. Our bodies are designed to move so much more than most people move. And even, sadly enough, so much more than most children move now, which is why we see that the millennials are the generation most interested in health and the generation with the most chronic disease, right, at that age. Super sad, super reversible. Okay, I'm just going to go for a few slides here. So in Living Ayurveda, we go into how the different body types are going to look at these rhythms a little bit differently. There's too many words on this slide to digest, but this is what I do on my coaching calls, is in real time, someone brings something to the table, this is what's going on with me, or this is what's going on with my kid or my client, and we draw it out. And I start to explain these concepts, learning in real time. I don't show slides. When I'm with you guys, I just have my drawing board and I draw out what's going on, what's so important. In this, I'm showing different eating rhythms for the different body types. So this is how many meals per day, per constitution, per symptoms going on. Again, just getting people in rhythmic eating and rhythmic sleeping. It's like, sometimes it's like moving boulders up mountains. But the thing is that in community, it's so much faster. And what we notice is that, it happens in real time. And each month we focus on one of the basic habits of Dinacharya. Almost everybody's in Body Thrive with me anyways. There's a deal with Living Ayurveda that basically you get access to. I'm just trying to find the slide for that. Living Ayurveda, the 9-month course, it's a $5,000 course, and you get the habits course with me, which is for a year included as a bonus, where we're working on habits week by week by week by week until the habits, these simple habits, which seem so straightforward and yet can be so hard to implement, right? So these become automatic in your life. When these habits are automatic, you have energy efficiency. You have a surplus of energy that goes to healing. Your body will heal your immune system as fast as it possibly can, as long as you cooperate. All right, so let's get into the less obvious ones. And I've mentioned them on some other calls. So we've got gut shots and cold showers, cold plunging. Let's talk about gut shots first. So this is me at home making my gut shots. So I just mix up a bunch of stuff in my blender. This is cabbage and water, and the other one's purple cabbage. I maybe add a little beets and turmeric root, maybe a little ginger root, 'cause it's making it fancy. The other one's just green cabbage and water. Super boring, but it's the one my kid likes. A little bit of salt. And this is just sitting in there until it starts to taste like pickle juice, basically. It starts to taste fermented. And then I squish it through a strainer, and then I pour it through a bottle. So we have, aren't that beautiful, Mary? They're so beautiful, these nectars. Then I pour them in, you know those brandy decanters that they use that were really popular in the 50s? I pour them in brandy decanters, and they're right in the front of my fridge. So you open the fridge, and my brother got really excited. He would rather it had brandy in it. But he's like, what is this? I'm like, it's gut shots. Let's have some gut shots. And so we had some gut shots, and he loved them. Why is it so important? Why are gut shots on this top 6 list?
Why? When you look at your immune system and where it lives and what it is, the major part of your immune system lives in your gut. It's your biome. And if you have been on a lot of medication and you've been really stressed out and you have chronic inflammation and you've been maybe eating other things, your biome is not a happy place. The population distribution has shifted away from what is optimal for your health. And so this is elixir for the biome.
And like all for the cost of about, I mean, really, to do this costs organic gut shots, homemade gut shots, designer gut shots, which you can put all of your favorite stuff in. You're looking at $2 for a half gallon.
Yeah. I mean, they do sell gut shots if you're not up for buying them, but it's so easy to make. And also you can eat the cabbage, you can eat the fermented food too. So
yeah, well, and that's a cool thing. I know this, and to me, this is where the Living Ayurveda course goes. So you guys might wonder, like, how is this different than other online courses on Ayurveda? Because we're constantly inventing it. I started talking about gut shots in April 2018, right? Because I was looking for an easy, inexpensive way for my course members with autoimmune diseases to be able to start to just make stuff at home that was individuated to their constitution. So the thing about gut, and I was buying the gut shots in the store. We all have these different, I'm just trying to find my constitution slide here. We all have different constitutions. And for me, I was taking the gut shots in the store. And what I noticed is they're way too salty. Because I have a lot of, even though I don't look like I have a ton of kapha, I have quite a bit of kapha in my physical constitution. And I have a lot of pitta. So salt is too heating, and it's too high, what is it?
Hydroscopic.
Yeah, it absorbs
sucks water in. Yeah.
Sucks water in. Hydrophilic.
Hydroscopic, same thing.
Same thing. I don't know hydroscopic. Thank you for adding a word to my vocabulary, Mary. Mary has this background in engineering too, and she comes up with these things, and I'm like, oh, I see it your way now. My life is better. So the reason I want people, again, self-healers become personal thrivers. Self-healers means you learn how to make the most basic, inexpensive stuff that's individuated to you. Because when you do this, when it's your hands making your own food, there's a level of immunity that increases. This is really big in Ayurveda. And for many of you out there, you're thinking like, I can't do this. But guess what? Like, we do baby steps. Like, we'll get you there. Teeny tiny changes over time. It's not everything all at once. It's these little changes, and soon you get it. And soon you're designing your physiology at the grocery store. For some of us who harvest or do things in our garden, or I do a lot in my ecosystem, even more so than my garden, we start to be able to design our body intelligently with plants and with processes.
Yeah, has anybody you can put in the chat maybe, have you guys been told to take probiotics? If you've been told to take probiotics, you know that buying them is really expensive. And once your system, once you get to a certain point, this is such an economical alternative. And literally most of the time you're doing nothing. You set it up, you walk away, you come back, you use it. It is not, you just need a little space on your counter for it. And,
Yeah.
And then it takes care of itself. And it's very powerful. But and if you don't want to start there, there's recommendations I can give you on food-based probiotics that you can buy.
Yeah.
And you start there. And then one day you go, oh, I'm going to try this. And
I'm
you
gonna do
try
it.
it.
We have so many people doing things for the very first time. And all I want to say too is when you make stuff for yourself, right? And yeah, buy it first. It's easy. Buy it first. No problem. Like hang out with us enough and you'll start making it. I promise. This is what we see in Living Ayurveda course. We're like, just hang out with us and these things just naturally start to happen over time. The habits get automated. You have energy efficiency. You start to notice you get way more involved in creating the physical tissue of your body yourself by making your own foods. And it gets to be super fun. So when you do this, when you make your own food, you're igniting this Vijnanamaya kosha. This is like the super smart kosha that's informing the mind and the emotions. And you start to notice like, wow, I feel more relaxed when I make my own food. I feel more relaxed when I make my own gut shots. Like I actually have a lot of fun making my own gut shots. And I never thought I would. And we see this all the time. Even I'm going to do another post on turmeric supplements and whatnot, because I was trying to show my mom the other day, like the amount that she needs to take for joint health, and the cost of that is prohibitive. So she'll try to save and stretch the pills out for longer. And I was showing her that turmeric costs about $9 a pound organic on Amazon from about 4 or 5 different suppliers. If you mix it with honey, if you mix it with a little coconut oil, a little ginger and black pepper, which are activators, do it, and you can make this big massive gunk of turmeric gunk for about $20, and that will last an individual 6 months, and you can take as much as you actually need to get the anti-inflammatory response. So there's so much of this just shifting in how we're thinking about things. All right, so we get that we need to make our own probiotics. Gut shots is to me, it's the cheapest, easiest, most absorbable. Mary brought her turmeric gunk, awesome. We also call it boo candy around here because I wanted when Indy was 2 years old, I wanted her to think it was candy. So her nickname was Boo, and the turmeric honey was Candy. We still use the name Boo Candy today. Okay, so the last thing, cold showers, cold plunging. This is me in the creek. I showed you guys this last time on the Family Healer Masterclass when I was showing you who I could influence, because I got a bunch of people in this creek. This creek is about 40 degrees. I know I'm looking like I'm in a hot spring, but I'm not. Right? And the thing is, I'll take a cold shower or I'll do a cold plunge every day of the year. Why? Massive anti-inflammation. It's such a quick anti-inflammatory. So even if your physiology is inflamed, even if you're puffy, if you're groggy, if you're bloated, this drops inflammation so fast. And there's great research done by I'll put his name in, by Wim Hof. Many of you follow Wim Hof. And this, I just want to say too, this is like part of when Mary was saying like it's a community Living Ayurveda course. I learned this from one of my members who had an autoimmune diagnosis, and she turned me on to Wim Hof. So being a Living Ayurveda course member, also the leader, I was like, I better check this out. So I started doing a ton of research on it. I started experimenting with my body. I put a cold plunge tub in. I went to US cryotherapy the other day, which is like where you get cold air blasted. And I'm experimenting and I'm noticing like, wow, on a personal level, this definitely takes the level of personal thriver up a notch. So finding out like, what is your top 6? And it's going to have something, in the top few have really got to center around your rhythm. And the more you understand that your bucket breaks, the more you're out of the rhythm. Vata sets the rhythm, early to bed, early to rise. Vata sets the rhythm for digestion, that you can't tax your digestion. You cannot use your digestive system to balance your emotional body. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it has lasting, I would say, catastrophic results, because our habits are communal. Most people are training their kids to eat too frequently. They're training their kids to eat too late at night. They're training their kids to go to bed late and wake up late. These rhythms are so necessary if we want to have immune health. And if we get that, like, wow, once we go down this to me is so scary. Like, once your immune system goes down, it gets more and more complicated. So you got to look at the things that make the biggest difference. I'm just going to read in closing a few quotes from Living Ayurveda course members, and again, remind people to reach out to Gail Edison to talk about Living Ayurveda course. And we have a ton of really great videos that really talk more about, in particular, the training of it, and that's all at yogahealer.com/Living Ayurveda. So this is Dr. Beth Claxton, who's she's also a yoga health coach. She's a OBGYN doctor, and she says learning the principles of Ayurveda changed my perspective on health and disease 180 degrees. As an OBGYN, I go to the kitchen now instead of the medicine cabinet to treat myself, my family, my friends, and even my patients. This is from Lisa, who's a yoga teacher and a body worker. She says, for me personally, LAC changed how I live. LAC's Living Ayurveda course. It helped me answer the question, how is it so, in my own healing process? So I could make the necessary changes in my daily living to create more balance where there was imbalance. Professionally, it helped me recognize imbalances in my clients, students, and provide recommendations so they could have a more balanced body. And I've got to say, this is true of all the pro healers that come in to Living Ayurveda, is you go so much deeper into your own personal healing process to orient to higher levels of thrive. This is from Glinda. She says, I know now that there is a way other than conventional Western allopathic way to view health and disease, and I have a good grounding in how to use Ayurveda in my life. We have an intergenerational health perspective. It's so important that people start to understand disease and lifestyle intergenerationally on our own personal healing paths, because it's so related. And sorry, I think I missed the last one. All right, so I guess that's really kind of all I have to say on this. I know we went through a lot. I often remind people that our courses, you're not just a course, but we're a community. We meet up twice a year. This is us in Mexico last, when was this? February. And it's not female exclusive, although it sometimes looks that way. And that's really, I guess that's really all I wanted to say today, is that you really want to get to the root of it. And you want to start to have this perspective. Like, what am I doing each day to step deeper into being a self-healer, having that identity, I'm a self-healer, and moving on that evolutionary spectrum too. I'm a personal thriver. Any closing thoughts, Mary?
The notion to me that you can have the power to shift things in your life with a paradigm that has so much wisdom, so much duration. Ayurveda's been around for a long time and has so much simplicity at a level of implementation. It's very powerful. And it's very different than, I'll tell you, when I went to the rheumatologist and he offered me Plaquenil and told me it was vitamin K for my immune system, and then which it's an immunomodulator, and then said, please take as good care of yourself. And this was the wise thing he did. You'll be back, but please take as good care of yourself as you can. That's the advice I can offer you. And I was really grateful for that advice after I said no to the Plaquenil, because when you start to really plug in and take care of yourself with support, with wisdom, with community to move things in the direction you choose, you prioritize, then you can do a lot for yourself, and you can take really good care of yourself, and that has positive consequence. That has positive consequence. Just like not taking care of yourself has the other side of consequence. So yeah, that's what I'll say. To look at this system, and the other thing I'll say about this from the standpoint of it, the class, is every time we delve into this, we delve in as a group, and everybody on the group has a common focus. The common focus is to use the best available information we have within Ayurveda and whatever else we have to help people. And we all get on board to do that. And that common focus has a lot of power to support and promote you actualizing what you want. And we encourage people not to just be a lurker. We want everybody's participation. We want everybody to help everybody else. And like as a mentor, what I do is hold space for that and add wisdom when I can. But it's all about you healing you in a way that's substantial. So
thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just close by really bringing people to like Ayurveda's, there's so much to offer in your exploration with Ayurveda. So if you're one of my friends, Prashanti Dejagar, some of you might know him. He founded an Ayurvedic herb company. He's an amazing guy, and he'd say, "Are you smitten? Are you smitten by Ayurveda?" Because Ayurveda, there's a sense of being smitten, kind of like having a crush on it in a way. And when you get smitten by Ayurveda, that's coming from your Vijnana Maya kosha. That's coming from a high level of intelligence, that yearning. And honor that yearning, learn it, like learn the system of it, whether it's through us and living our Ayurveda course or it's somewhere else. Go deeper so that you can start to understand yourself holistically. You can understand your 5 koshas. You can understand your type of digestion. You can understand your constitution. You can understand dinacharya. You can understand the pathways of disease. Because once you have an understand how to make your own medicines, how to make your own skincare products, once you understand, you become so much more of an interconnected, holistic human being. You become a boon to yourself and to those around you. And to me, it's so important to honor your desire to go deep into Ayurveda, because it's really only through going deep that we understand it. Otherwise, we just have these little bits of information of like, oh, this thing works over here, this thing works, but we don't have a holistic understanding of why. Because once you understand the why, you understand like a million things would work where that one worked. You start to understand more like, this is why I need to have certain habits. This is why I need to prepare my own food body through preparing my own food. This is why I need to evolve my practices as I get older, because I want to know what thrive is at the next level. And that's very much why I'm here, what we do here at Yoga Healer and in the Living Ayurveda course. Thank you all so much for being here. Great to see that we made it to the end in big group, over 100 people still here. So namaste to you all. We love to get feedback, what you learned, what was helpful. And deep bow to you, Mary Sullivan. I'm so glad our paths crossed when they did.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Oh, I consider it a pivotal moment in changing my life course for the better. Hey, Kate, there's a couple questions on the Q&A. Do we have, is there access to the previous calls?
There is access to the previous calls. So yeah, we'll send that out in the next email, links to all the previous calls.
People also wondered if they could have access to the boot candy recipe.
Yes, we will share that in the links. We'll share the gut shot recipe in the links as well. We'll share all these slides with you in the follow-up. Yeah.
Okay, those were the main questions. Thanks.
And I want you all to share this. So if you found this helpful, and I'd like you to listen this week, because you're going to run into 3 people that are talking about immune system imbalances. I promise you that. You're gonna run into people that are talking about joint pain, talking about digestive stuff, talking about food sensitivities. They can't digest gluten anymore. They can't digest dairy anymore. And please send them to this. If we start to understand that these sensitivities, these allergies, that these are some of the first signs of accumulation, aggravation in an immune system imbalance, we can really help each other out. All right. Thank you all. Namaste.
Namaste.